And of course, what we have to talk about today is the virus. I did two earlier this week videos, which I hope you took a look at. I know a lot of people said, would you please go on more often because you are the voice of reason. I'm a voice. I don't know that I'm the voice, but I'm certainly a voice, and I am here for you. And so I just wanted to walk through a few things. I took a lot of notes because I want to make sure that I go through everything that I have planned today, because there were several questions that all revolved around the virus. And I ran down so quick from taking my shower that if I start sweating, it's just because I've been running around. So let's just get this clear. You know, as far as the virus goes, 82% are mild symptoms. That's according to the New York Times, and the severe ones are less than 5%. So a lot of people say, oh, well, that means it's not a big deal. Well, you know, that's the hard thing for all of us to figure out, is what is a big deal. That, you know, if you get it bad enough, it's severe pneumonia, and there are only so many ventilators to go around in the United States. That's the great fear, and that a lot of those ventilators are already in place. So what will we do if we get overwhelmed? And so what's changed is this week they've talked about flattening the curve, that if we go unchecked like Italy and some of the other models did, you get this huge spike and then we can't take care of ourselves. And the goal is that if we can just make this last a little bit longer, to get people away from each other, then what that will do, it will flatten the curve, and so people can actually build up some antibodies, and the healthcare system can comply. Again, I am not a doctor, but I can tell you one thing: if you get nothing else from me today, wash your damn hands. It's the most effective thing you can do. And the second one is to remain calm. So, you know, the outlook over the next few weeks, the way I look at it is everybody is looking at, how do I make one less trip? How do I wash my hands one more time? You know, you can't go back and think, oh, I touched that elevator button, or I shook hands with this guy. That's going to make you nuts, because quite simply, this is really in a lot of ways like the flu, right? Already there have been somewhere between 36 and 51 million flu cases, according to the CDC, and 370 to 670,000 flu hospitalizations and 22 to 55,000 flu deaths. Can you imagine if that was on our front page for the last, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months? It would destroy us, because you would feel like, oh my God, we're all going to die. We are in a certain amount of, we've been through the flu before, and frankly, it's called COVID-19 because there's been 18 others before, and we have gotten through it. Does that mean that it doesn't matter? Look, everybody has their own way of deal with it. I know some people are telling jokes about it. I know some people are, the Washington Post had a story today that Austin, all the restaurants, was packed last night, and yet areas of Washington, D.C. were totally empty. Florida was, Fort Lauderdale had people on the beach, you know, next to each other and doing selfies and all that. And I think we have to get out of the judgment that we know better. At the end of the day, all you can control is what you can control. And, you know, we say, well, I'm young, I probably don't have to worry about it. And I was reading somewhere on Medium this morning that the vast majority of positive cases in Washington state were people 40 years of age and older, with the largest number of cases concentrated between people 80 years old and above. And let's not forget, 22 of the 27 deaths in Kirkland were from one nursing home facility. Washington state has closed schools, and they're going to be there until April 24th. They're going to be closed in the state. The biggest developments that happened that got my attention on, I think it was Thursday, was when they said they're closing Disneyland until the end of the month. And then Apple yesterday announced they were closing all their stores worldwide until March 27th. And why is that? Well, the reason is because they are looking at America like we are about 12 to 14 days behind Italy. And Italy took a big hit in this, and they're trying to get ahead of it. That's what everyone is talking about, is trying to get ahead and to keep it a manageable outbreak, and not a you know, something that closes the whole thing. Some people say it's a boon to online. Oh, the shoppers will never go back. You know what? I'm seeing more people going to brick and mortar stores and asking and talking to other people. At least where I live, people are seeming to be nicer when they are engaging with people. The reality is that online is going to suffer just as much, because I don't need new clothes if I'm not going out. And, you know, an awful lot of people are going to have to learn how to suddenly cook, because they're not going to be going to restaurants. So that could change things for the better. That could be different. I think we're looking at, as I said in some of my other videos, that we are really looking at this as if somebody flooded your town. To me, that's the best example. It is not a snow day. The town has been flooded. There's going to have to be rebuilding, and the rebuilding is going to come three parts. One, consumer demand has dropped off the map right now. Nobody is looking at buying anything unless it's going in a pantry and being afraid, right? The stock market has taken a huge hit, so boomers are going to be very scared for a while until that comes back up. And at the same time, oil has crashed, so an awful lot of areas that depend on oil are going to have a tough time. Pennsylvania, Texas, some other places getting out of it. And couple all of that with the fact that an awful lot of small independent retailers have a tough time holding on in the best of times, much less being stressed. And then you add in that the new tariffs are supposed to go in place June 1st, and you start to see that the supply chains are still broken down. The other side of that is to look at China's factories are coming back online now. Looks like they're going to be in, I think somebody said by the end of this month, we're expecting them to be able to ship, and things are 3 weeks on the water. So on that side, that's it. The hope we're looking for is that there are less new cases per day than the day before. For 2 days, that's what you need to see for us to kind of get through this. So on one level, you say, well, it's just like the flu. And imagine 10 years ago, they would have just said there's a severe flu outbreak. The challenge is that everyone is looking at how do we take care of others? And that's why I've said over and over, this is a we, not me moment. Dear God, do not get on if the news people come to you and want to show your store empty, please do not show how it sucks to be you that is not bringing people to you. I get it. You're losing money. You know what? Everyone's losing money. You are not alone. This is going to be doing the same thing to everybody across the land. So make sure that your messaging is that we are in a new era and it is about we. People have been saying all along, what's going to bring, Democrats and Republicans together, black and white and gay and straight and East Coast and middle of the country and all stuff together. This could do it because you suddenly realize that, one less trip for me to the grocery store means one less chance that either I give or I pass on germs. One less time that I go to the gas station, one less time I go to the office, that I'm taking care of other people. It's the most vulnerable we're talking about here. It's not about you getting sick. It's about what could happen to people down the way. And ultimately, to shock everybody to do that, the draconian measures are everything from the state of California has limited gatherings of more than 50 people. I know when I was talking to a client in Spain, they were talking about how all the cinemas and everywhere you can gather are closed. Restaurants are allowed to be open limited hours in coffee houses, but if you could hold 100 people in a coffee house, you had to cut that down to 50 to keep social distancing. So life does kind of go on, but I worry about the front line, the grocery workers, the Starbucks, the people who are delivering our packages. What, are they nothing? Do we just say, it doesn't matter? So the more that we keep just going on our blithe way, we're really not helping other people. We're like, but it's me. It's this scarcity. I've got to be worried. And I think there's an abundance, and we've got to get our heads right on that, or the whole thing doesn't work. Make no mistake, this is a huge scar that's going to be in our collective psyches. The first one I ever had was the Kennedy assassination. My mom was at home. She would never let anyone in the door, and the Fuller Brush man knocked on the door. That was a company that actually went door to door selling brushes and things for your hair. And she said, "Oh my God, the president's shot, come in." And I remember that day like it was yesterday, and the whole country shut down for 3 days, and we watched the funeral, and it was a very sad time. 9/11 would be there as well, the financial crash as well. As Lehman Brothers was going down, we were all like, holy crap, there's no tomorrow. Well, we're in 9/11, and it's about 10 a.m. We just don't know where this is going. We don't know anything else, and we can get a false sense of security and say, it's not me. The reality is, it's we. So instead of going through and saying it's not a big deal, I think we have to understand that when the market comes back, and economists that I'm reading think that the stock market will come back once we get the demand back, once we get safety back, once we get a supply chain back, that will be the key. But how does the cruise market pick up from this? It's going to be very tough, right? And ultimately, if we've been cooped up for a long time, there's pent-up demand. So we expect people to want to come back out, and they're going to want to do things, and that's great. But you know what? We have to be kinder, and we have to be unified. And that means instead of screaming at the toilet paper guys in the grocery store or having to buy 5 of them, you buy 1, and you don't end up taking supplies from other people for masks if you don't have it. Just be involved and read the CDC what you're supposed to do. This is not brain surgery, folks. All you have to do is limit your exposure out in the world, wash your damn hands, go through and take care of yourself, and that's going to help all of us get better. Remember also that we have short attention spans, and we are in terrified mode right now. And the number one way you can get better is to just tell yourself, I have to get calm. You have to choose that. I have to choose that myself. I have to limit the news to 15 minutes a day. I quickly scan what is on the New York Times, Washington Post. That's it. I am not going to get pulled into the social media scare of saying the hysterics. It doesn't help anybody, and most importantly, it doesn't help you. So I'm going to say hi to you all now because you're all over here. I see you. My gosh, it says I have 33 comments. There's a lot of you here. So let's see, where's my first one? Is it? So Carol, hey, glad you're there from St. Louis. Jennifer, good morning. Michaela, good morning. Cheryl, glad you're there. Alicia from Ontario. Hey, Tristan. Farah, Larry, good morning from snow-covered Western Maryland. My goodness, that's the pits. It's almost spring, dude. Good morning to everybody. Hey, there's an awful lot of you here, and I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Good morning, Stacy from Saratoga Springs. There's an awful lot of you. I can't say all because otherwise you're all going to turn off, and I don't want that. So give me some thumbs up if you like what I have to say. Give me some likes because ultimately, no matter what I'm going to say today, it still comes down to the only way I grow that message of hope and reason to your friends and other retailers is for enough people to be engaged in my content. So there you go. So, again, what to do? Wash your damn hands, limit news to 15 minutes, have a store meeting. I did a post on what you should do with the coronavirus. You can certainly scroll down through there. I'll post it again today. It's in my newsletter tonight. But have a health meeting. And that doesn't mean that it's a one-off. You suddenly realize that we're in a new normal. We have to go through and instruct people how to have basic personal hygiene and how do we do it ourselves. I've seen several people say, ask anyone who has a cold, fever, show signs as a customer, shopper, or employee to leave and go home. But the next 2 weeks are critical. That's the whole reason why everybody has shut everything down this Thursday and Friday. We're trying to stay ahead of Italy. That's it. So I think I have all of these mind. Yeah, that's right. Exactly, Mark. It's a global issue which we have to go through together as humans. Brilliant idea. That's a great idea. What about comments from the customers? I mean, ultimately, we are about as happy or crazy as we make ourselves up to be. A friend of mine said that she coughed the other night and she was up for 2 or 3 hours trying to find out if she had it. You can make yourself crazy any time of the year. Have you ever done that? You're feeling sick, you online, you're like, oh, I might have a cold. Or brain cancer. Great. Thank you very much. I mean, that's it. And so we have a lot of people who are able to capitalize on that fear and keep us in a state of fear. And ultimately, I think we have got to be the face of reason and use that choice muscle and say, yes, I could do all of this. But, a case of this in your community is a case of flu in your community. When we get to the point that they have to close things down in your area, which I think is where we're going to go, I think they're going to ultimately end up being able to quarantine areas once we get it. But this idea that there's safety in a vaccine or in a test isn't really it, because I could test negative for it, and I go outside and I shake hands accidentally, or I'm in a theater, or any million ways that we could do it, I would be exposed to it. And a lot of the cases are mild, so I'm not really going to know that I'm sick. So this whole idea that there's a safety out there, we're Americans, well, I'm American, we don't like not knowing. We expect if I just knew it, I could deal with it. Well, we're not going to know. And we're in the early days. And so it's going to get weird. There's no two ways about it. So if you have any questions for me or you would like me to answer, put them in the comments here below. I only have like 5 here today, and then I'm going to leave. But ultimately, we're going to have to get through this thinking differently. So there you go. So first question, Miri. How should we market to our customers in such times where brick and mortar high-end women's store in New York City, no online shop? Well, as I had somebody was telling me how I think a knitting shop had shown that she'd done a video or something that took out all of her needles that were made in China and then did a video. It's like, that is really not the way to do this. This is not a matter of them and us. Another one was telling me about in Burbank, California. The reporters came down to this downtown area and showed no one in the restaurant, and the guy's like, "No one's here, so we clean and then we prop open the door so people can come in, but no one's coming in." Look, here's the reality: your doors have already been shut. You just don't know it yet, and I know that's hard to hear. But when the news is saying don't go out, when people are afraid to go out, it's not like you're magically going to have some sale that's going to draw them to you. So I think you really have to look at your marketing has to become what can people do who are cooped up indoors. So if I was a high-end women's store, I would talk about getting ready for when this is over and how to refashion your closet. So I would go through and do like an informative session of videos. First we start with a foundation. Do you have the right foundation? And I would go through and talk about that. That a lot of times clothes don't fit right if we don't have the right foundation. Then I'm going to go through and say, how do you determine your body type? And I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to go through and try to make them smarter consumers who remember me in a crisis, rather than say, oh, come in and buy from us because we're hurting. Everyone's hurting. So it's not about you. It has to be, what can you do to be helpful to them as a we? That's what I think. I think an awful lot of times we have to go through and just figure out how do we find this new normal. So I know that's a tough one to say, but when they're closing Disneyland, when they're closing Broadway, when airlines are running empty, when hotels are empty, realize that you have been hit by a flood and you're going to have to recover from this. But you certainly aren't going over during a flood and saying, come shop us because that's just not it. All right, Shella says, I see stores like Urban Outfitters, Free People, and Anthropology closing their shop until the end of the month due to the coronavirus. Should we follow suit? I think that's an independent conversation. I think if most people are closed on your street, I think you could easily explain it. I certainly think if you do that, you have to be very prepared to stay really active on social media. Who wins in this outbreak? I think we realize that social media and Facebook is a place we're looking to hear from our friends and see that they're okay and everything. So I think that ultimately you have to stay engaged with them online. I think you could still be emailing, but I think you also have to balance that with what are you doing during this time. If your employees are not sick and you're not forced to close, but yet you're closing your doors because it looks better for the city, well then what's the plans to repaint, to recarpet, to add lighting, or what are the things that you should have been doing all along you haven't done? What about getting rid of all the crap in your back or something else, but get ready for the message that we're back in business? Because hope is what brings people to retail. And the more you are a Danny Downer, you're, no offense to the guy's named Danny, the more that you are going to just make it like, well, I don't want to go back there. So the more you can show I'm going through what you're going through, the better. But, doing videos of you cleaning is really not the issue. We're being told to limit public exposure to places. So there you go. How do I shift people to our website? Well, I think that's, again, you can do an email out to your crew, your followers. But again, I think you have to be very careful of, oh, we're having a sale. There's no demand. Do you get that? The demand has dried up right now. People are worried about catching and they're looking suspicious at everything. So I think you really have to go through and pull back and say, all right, we have to go through and get ready for when it comes back. And am I the guy that has, somebody said, well, you have to tell your followers to do all this stuff. It's like, I am not the wizard. You are the creative ones. You are the ones who are positive, who opened a business. Together we can come up with some good ideas. But ultimately, we have to go through and find a way to get through this time together. And it's going to be longer than we all initially think. We like to think, oh, I'll close for a few days and it's done. It just isn't. We've got to wait and see what happens. Top fan Heidi says, grocers and big box are scaling back their hours. How do we make decisions about scaling back hours and closing, etc.? So Heidi, I would certainly say if your town is a ghost town, I think it makes it really easy. And whether you are going to pay your employees or not, I don't know the answer to that. But staying open out of pride, even if no one is coming in, I don't know what that serves. So I certainly say I would talk to your mayor is who I would start the conversation with and say, what are the risks to us? the economic do not look good about this. What's the plan going to be coming out? And be proactive. And then together with your mayor and your local government, I would say chat with them. I hope that helps. Kimberly, how can we create a virtual community of retailers and consumers to help each and every business from clothing stores, et cetera, encourage customers to stay away but support these businesses from the safety of their homes? I covered this, Kimberly, on Thursday, I think, that you go to your local bank, your chamber of commerce, your association to try to get people to be able to buy gift cards so they can support their favorite retailers without making it a handout like a GoFundMe, and you're basically taking a rain check. We need an app or platform for each community that's a one-stop shop and information. These businesses are communities. I've said all of this. I'm not sure where we're going. I know that. So as I said, talk to those people and get those people in your area. We need to support everyone in the community. Exactly. It could also offer services for the elderly, such as ordering groceries for the elderly and having them shipped. Many older folks might not have this to do. Well, I would say, Kimberly, the one bit of information I can give you is download the app Nextdoor. It's all together one word. And you can register and find out what people need. And I would encourage everybody to get on that app, because then you can go through and see how you can help your neighbors. So consider that. Sarah, please share ideas for production education videos to customers. I think I already did that. What point should we cover and how long of a video is effective? It has to be a minimum of 3 minutes. I do have my, not to be crass, but I do have my Facebook Live video class, which is going to start March 23rd. It goes for 14 days, and there's a lesson with each one. And if you're interested in that, I talk about that in the newsletter, and I've already got several of you signed up. I stop at 10. But again, you want to be thinking about who they are. There they are, they're caught up in their homes. They can't drive. So what could they do with what they have on time? You do not want to say, come into the store and buy materials from us. That's not going to help. All right, let's take a look at any other questions. I manage a cannabis business. Do you think some business will benefit or not see a drop in sales? I think it's just a matter of time, Rolando, about sales dropping. Quite simply, we're being told over and over again that you shouldn't go out, limit public exposure, et cetera, et cetera. And just each day has gotten more and more draconian. So I think if you haven't seen it yet, it probably will. Cheryl, while our customers are less, we still have some coming in and they tell us they're happy, we are open and feel safer in a small store. That's great, but you do have to ask yourself, when most people will not have symptoms, are you contributing to the problem, or are you putting yourself at risk? So there you go. Mohammed, I like the flooding analogy. Makes it easier to understand and make the tough decision we all need to make. That's exactly it. That's why I chose it, Mohammed. It's not really a hurricane, it's a flood, because your whole area has gone through and now has rebuilding, but it's all still there. You're just going to have to find a way to get that back. And by the way, if you don't know who I am, I encourage you to go to retaildoc.com and you can read my blogs, etc. about there. So if you get the coronavirus, how long does it stay in your body? I don't know the answer to that, Peterson. I would say always go to the CDC and find out. We're looking how to do online casts, etc. That's great. Stacy, Bob's the retail doctor. Exactly. Pamela, I'm reviewing incoming orders and adjusting payroll. Cheryl, Nextdoor is awesome. It is. Mark says there's a Facebook campaign in Germany at the moment saying basically when the crisis is over, come back to your local retailers and support them after a difficult time. I think that's fine, but the reality is we don't know how long that's going to be. That's why I would say stay engaged with your tribe, stay engaged with your community, and let them know. But, somebody was saying, oh, well, what should I do with my spring orders? Spring is gone if you didn't quite get that. I mean, we're going to have a tough time. So I would certainly say you're going to have to adjust your orders and realize that normal may not really be till June or July. It just may not be that way. Now, in your local area, again, Austin is partying like everything is fine. It may be different, but I think the most important thing you can do is just focus on what we're trying to do here is to flatten that curve, that we don't want to be like Italy where everything suddenly spikes and then it overwhelms the hospitals. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, where you are in the States. It's like the flu. It could be everywhere around us, and most of us would not even know it. But it's about the most vulnerable, the most weak, and what we can do to make that better for everybody. So the more we think about it as a we problem than an I problem, I think life gets easier. So if you like what I had to say, give me some thumbs up. If you like my voice of reason and not panic, certainly let me know. But remember, we're all in this together, and when we get through this, in a couple of years, there'll be another one just as bad. So we are learning new skills on how to do it. We're going to be learning on new ways of how we talk to people. And we have to remember that the stranger isn't the enemy, that people who are, not taking their proper precautions and not washing their hands, I think that this is all just made up, probably need education somehow down the way. So with that in mind, I'm Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doc. As always, I'm glad you're here with me. If I get enough questions next Saturday, I will do another live video on Sunday the 22nd. Until then, wash your damn hands.